The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines for the first time in 4 years. Gladys Carter stared at it through tears of pure joy, her hands shaking as she held what felt like a miracle. After countless doctor visits, treatments, and months of disappointment, she was finally pregnant at 28. She couldn't wait to share the news with Hudson, her husband of 5 years. They had met in college when she was studying business and he was pursuing finance. He had swept her off her feet with his charming smile and promises of building a beautiful life together. When her father passed away 2 years into their marriage, leaving her the family logistics company, Hudson had been her rock through the grief. The ultrasound appointment was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Gladys had asked Hudson to meet her there, wanting to experience this magical moment together. She arrived at the medical center early, practically floating through the parking lot. The technician confirmed what she already knew: she was 8 weeks pregnant, and everything looked perfect. "Would you like pictures?" the technician asked with a warm smile. "Yes, please." Gladys clutched the ultrasound images to her chest as she walked toward the lobby, ready to call Hudson and share the wonderful news. But as she rounded the corner near the hospital cafe, she heard a familiar voice that made her freeze mid-step. Hudson was sitting at a corner table, his back to her, speaking in hushed tones to someone across from him. "The timing couldn't be more perfect, Florence. She's so focused on getting pregnant that she hasn't noticed me moving the money around." Gladys felt her world tilt. Florence, her best friend since childhood. The woman who had held her while she cried about infertility struggles. The woman who had been coming to their house for dinner every week, offering support and encouragement. She ducked behind a large pillar, her heart pounding so loud she was afraid they might hear it. "I still can't believe we're both pregnant at the same time," Florence whispered, her voice carrying a cruel satisfaction that Gladys had never heard before. "Mine is already 12 weeks along. Hudson, once we get access to her father's company accounts, we can disappear together. Start fresh somewhere new. The logistics business is worth millions," Hudson replied. "She trusts me completely. I've been slowly transferring funds to offshore accounts. By next month we'll have enough to vanish forever." Gladys pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from crying out. Her best friend was pregnant. With her husband's child. And they were stealing her inheritance, the company her father had built from nothing. What about her? What about Gladys? Florence asked. Hudson laughed coldly. What about her? She'll be so devastated when she finds out we've been together for over a year that she won't even think to check the business accounts until it's too late. By then we'll be long gone. "I almost feel bad," Florence said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "She's been trying so hard to get pregnant." "Well, she finally got her wish," Hudson said. "Maybe that will keep her busy enough not to notice us cleaning out her accounts." Gladys clutched the ultrasound pictures tighter, the edges crumpling in her fist. The baby she had dreamed of, the husband she had loved, the best friend she had trusted, everything was connected to a web of lies and betrayal. She took a deep breath and quietly stepped back, making her way to the parking lot without being seen. As she sat in her car, staring at the ultrasound image of her tiny baby, something cold and calculating settled in her chest. They thought she was weak. They thought she was stupid. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Gladys drove home slowly, her mind already working. She had built her father's company into an even bigger success over the past 3 years. She had connections, resources, and most importantly, she had something they didn't know about. Her father had taught her to always keep detailed records of everything. If Hudson thought he could steal from her and abandon her while she was pregnant, he had picked the wrong woman to betray. By the time she pulled into her driveway, Gladys had made a decision. She wouldn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, she would do what her father had taught her in business: gather all the facts, plan carefully, and strike when victory was certain. She walked into the house she had bought with her inheritance money, past the furniture Hudson had chosen, and into the office where she kept all her business files. If they wanted to play games with her life, she would show them what a real game looked like. But first she had to make sure her baby was protected. This child would never want for anything, and would never be touched by the chaos her father was about to create. Gladys placed the ultrasound picture on her desk and opened her laptop. It was time to get to work. Hudson came home that evening with flowers and a guilty smile that Gladys now recognized for what it was. She had spent the afternoon creating a plan, and the first step was becoming the best actress of her life. "Hey, beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek. "How did the doctor's appointment go?" Gladys let tears of joy fill her eyes, real tears, but not for the reason he thought. "Hudson, we're pregnant." His face went through a series of expressions: surprise, something that might have been panic, then forced excitement. "Really? That's wonderful, honey. I'm so happy. She showed him the ultrasound pictures, watching as he held them with hands that had been planning to steal her future hours earlier. 8 weeks along. The doctor says everything looks perfect. I can't believe it, Hudson said, and she could hear the truth in those words. He truly couldn't believe his timing could be this complicated. That night, as Hudson slept beside her, Gladys stared at the ceiling and planned. She had learned a lot about people in the 3 years since taking over her father's business. The most important lesson was that betrayers always revealed themselves if you gave them enough rope. The next morning, after Hudson left for work, Gladys called her lawyer, Janet Phillips. Janet had been her father's attorney and had helped Gladys navigate taking over the business. Janet, I need to schedule a meeting. It's urgent and it's about protecting my assets. Of course, Gladys. Is everything all right? I'm not sure yet. But I need to make sure my company and personal accounts are secure. Can we meet today? At Janet's office that afternoon, Gladys explained what she had overheard without mentioning the affair. She focused on the financial theft. I have reason to believe someone with access to my accounts may be attempting to steal from me. I need to know my options for protecting myself and my assets. Janet leaned forward, her expression serious. Do you suspect your husband? Gladys met her eyes steadily. I suspect someone who has access to information they shouldn't have. They spent 2 hours going through every account, every business holding, every investment. Janet explained how to quietly monitor account activity and how to remove access without alerting the other party. The most important thing, Janet said, is that we document everything. If someone is stealing from you, we need proof before we act. When Gladys got home, Hudson was in the kitchen making dinner. He looked up with that same guilty smile. How are you feeling? Any morning sickness? A little tired, she said, sitting at the table. Hudson, I was thinking about the baby's future. Maybe we should review our insurance policies, make sure everything is set up properly. She watched his face carefully as she continued, and I want to make sure the business is structured to provide for our child. Maybe you could help me review the account structures. Hudson's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. Though you know I trust you to handle all that business stuff. You're so much better at it than I am. Liar. He had been handling plenty of business stuff, just not legally. I really want your input though, she insisted. This baby changes everything. I want us to be a team in securing our family's future. That weekend, Florence came over for their usual dinner. Gladys watched her childhood friend hug her, congratulate her on the pregnancy, and offer to help with anything she needed. You're going to be such a wonderful mother, Florence said, her hand briefly touching her own still flat stomach. I hope so, Gladys replied. I just want to do everything right. This baby means everything to me. Florence's eyes flickered with something guilt, perhaps, or satisfaction. I'm sure Hudson is over the moon. He is, Gladys said, looking at her husband across the room. We're both so committed to building the best life for our family. After Florence left, Gladys went to her office and began her real work. She had installed software to monitor all account activity, and what she found made her blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, Hudson had been making small transfers to an account she had never seen before. The amounts were carefully calculated to stay under the radar, a few thousand here, a few thousand there. But they added up to nearly $50,000 of her money. She traced the account and found it was registered to a shell company. More research revealed that Florence was listed as the company's secretary. They had been planning this for months, possibly longer. Every dinner invitation, every supportive conversation, every moment of what she thought was friendship had been part of a plan to steal her life. Gladys printed everything and locked it in her office safe. Then she sat back in her chair and placed her hand on her still flat stomach. Don't worry, baby, she whispered. Mama's going to make sure you have everything you deserve. And the people who tried to take it from you are going to learn what real consequences look like. She had 6 more months to prepare before the baby arrived. That was plenty of time to dismantle their scheme piece by piece, and to make sure they faced justice for what they had done. The game was just beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Gladys became a detective in her own life. She installed hidden cameras in their home office and living room, positioned to catch Hudson when he thought he was alone. She also hired a private investigator, telling Janet she needed professional help documenting the theft. The investigator, Robert Chin, was recommended by Janet's firm. He was discreet, thorough, and had 20 years of experience in corporate fraud cases. I need you to document everything, Gladys told him in his downtown office. Financial records, meetings, communications, all of it. But they cannot know they're being investigated. Of course, Robert said. How long has this been going on? At least 6 months that I can prove, possibly longer. They're planning to disappear with stolen funds, possibly within the next month. Robert nodded grimly. We'll get you everything you need for both civil and criminal proceedings. Meanwhile, at home, Gladys continued her performance. She let Hudson believe he was successfully deceiving her, even going so far as to ask for his advice on business decisions. I'm thinking of expanding the trucking fleet, she mentioned one evening over dinner. There's this new logistics contract with a major retailer that could be worth millions. Hudson's eyes lit up with interest. Really? How much would the expansion cost? About $2 million up front, but the contract would pay for itself within the first year. The only issue is timing. They want an answer by next Friday. She watched him process this information, knowing he would pass it to Florence immediately. Sure enough, the hidden camera in their bedroom caught him making a phone call that night while she pretended to sleep. Florence, she's talking about a major expansion. $2 million. If we time this right, we could take the expansion money too. The next day, Florence called to invite herself over for lunch. I was just thinking about you, Florence said as they sat in the kitchen. How's the pregnancy going? Good, though I'm stress eating because of work, Gladys replied. There's this huge business opportunity, but the timing is terrible with the baby coming. What kind of opportunity? Gladys explained the fake logistics contract, watching Florence's face light up with greed. That sounds amazing. You should definitely go for it. What does Hudson think? He's supportive but worried about the financial risk. Florence leaned forward eagerly. What kind of upfront investment are we talking about? About $2 million. It would clean out most of our liquid assets, but the payoff would be huge. That evening, Hudson came home with unusual enthusiasm about the business expansion. I've been thinking about that contract you mentioned, he said. I think you should go for it. We're young, we can take the risk. Of course, he wanted her to move $2 million into accounts he could access. Gladys smiled sweetly. You really think so? It would mean liquidating almost everything. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money, Hudson said, unknowingly quoting advice she had heard him give Florence on the phone the night before. By the end of the week, Robert had provided her with a comprehensive report. Hudson and Florence had been meeting regularly for over a year. They had opened multiple accounts together, established fake business entities, and had been systematically stealing from Gladys's company. But the most damning evidence was a recording Robert had obtained of them planning their final theft and escape. Once she moves the money for this expansion, we take it all, Hudson's voice was clear on the recording. $2 million plus what we've already saved will be enough to disappear forever. What about the baby? Florence asked. She'll be too busy being a single mother to chase us down, Hudson replied coldly. Gladys sat in Janet's office, listening to the recording with tears in her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of rage. We have everything we need, Janet said softly. Financial theft, fraud, conspiracy. They're looking at serious prison time. Good, Gladys said firmly. But I want more than justice. I want them to lose everything the way they planned for me to lose everything. What are you thinking? Gladys placed her hands on her growing belly. I'm thinking it's time to turn the tables. They want to play games with my life? Let's see how they like losing theirs. Janet looked concerned. Gladys, we need to be careful. Revenge can complicate legal proceedings. This isn't revenge, Gladys said calmly. This is justice. And it's going to be perfectly legal. She had spent 3 weeks documenting their crimes. Now it was time to start dismantling their lives the same way they had tried to dismantle hers. The difference was she was going to succeed. That weekend, Gladys drove to the cemetery where her father was buried. She needed to remember who she was and where her strength came from. Thomas Carter had built Carter Logistics from nothing. Starting with a single truck and a dream, he had grown it into one of the most successful transportation companies in the state. When he died suddenly of a heart attack 3 years ago, everyone expected 25-year-old Gladys to sell the business. Instead, she had shocked everyone by taking over and growing the company by 30%. Standing at her father's grave, Gladys remembered his most important piece of advice. Never let anyone mistake your kindness for weakness. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Hudson and Florence had shown her exactly who they were. Now she would show them who she was. Monday morning, Gladys called an emergency meeting with her management team. Carter Logistics employed over 200 people, and she had a responsibility to protect them from Hudson's theft. I need to make some changes to our financial security protocols, she announced to her 5 department heads. There are some irregularities I need to investigate. Her operations manager, Patricia, looked concerned. What kind of irregularities? Unauthorized access to company accounts. I'm implementing new security measures immediately. She had already worked with Janet to remove Hudson's access to all business accounts. Now she was removing him from her personal accounts as well. That evening, Hudson came home to find Gladys cooking his favorite dinner. "This smells amazing," he said, kissing her neck. "What's the occasion?" "Can't I cook for my husband without a special reason?" she asked with a smile. Over dinner she brought up the business expansion again. "I've decided to go ahead with that logistics contract. I'm meeting with the bank tomorrow to arrange the financing." Hudson tried to hide his excitement. "That's great news. Do you need me to come with you?" "Actually, the bank manager suggested I handle it alone since the business accounts are in my name. Something about liability and paperwork being simpler." She watched his face fall slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Of course. You're so good at handling all that business stuff anyway." After dinner, Gladys went to her office while Hudson watched television. She had work to do. The fake logistics contract she had mentioned was actually part of her plan. She had created an elaborate paper trail showing a major expansion opportunity, complete with contracts, financial projections, and bank documents. To anyone looking from the outside, it would appear she was moving forward with a legitimate business investment. What Hudson didn't know was that the expansion money was actually being moved into a secure trust account that he couldn't access. Meanwhile, Janet had obtained a court order to freeze the accounts Hudson and Florence were using for their theft. The next morning, Gladys went to the bank as promised. But instead of arranging financing for a fake expansion, she was meeting with federal investigators who specialized in financial crimes. "We've reviewed all the evidence your attorney provided," Agent Rodriguez said. "This is a clear case of fraud and embezzlement. How do you want to proceed?" "I want them arrested," Gladys said simply. "But not yet. They're planning to make their final theft attempt within the next week. I want you to catch them in the act." "That's risky. What if they succeed in taking the money?" Gladys smiled coldly. "They can't steal what isn't there. I've already moved all liquid assets to protected accounts they can't access. When they try to execute their plan, they'll find empty accounts and federal agents waiting for them." That evening, Hudson was unusually affectionate, clearly believing his plan was working perfectly. "I love you so much," he said, holding her close. "I can't wait to start our family." Gladys looked at him, this man she had trusted with her heart, her body, her future. "I love you too," she said, meaning it in a way he would never understand. She loved who she thought he was. She loved the future she thought they would have. And that love was exactly why his betrayal was so unforgivable. "Hudson," she said softly, "what would you do if someone tried to hurt our family?" He tightened his arms around her. "I'd do whatever it takes to protect you and our baby. No one would ever hurt what's mine." The irony was suffocating. He was talking about protecting a family he was actively destroying. "I'm glad to hear that," Gladys said, placing her hand on her growing belly. "Because this baby deserves parents who would fight for them no matter what." As Hudson slept beside her that night, Gladys stared at the ceiling and planned the final phase of her counterattack. In 3 days, Hudson and Florence would attempt to steal $2 million from her business accounts. Instead, they would find themselves under arrest, facing federal charges, and losing everything they had worked so hard to steal. Her father had taught her to protect what was hers. Now it was time to show Hudson and Florence what happened to people who threatened a Carter's family. Wednesday morning, Gladys received a text from Florence. "Coffee today? I have some exciting news to share." Gladys stared at the message, wondering what new lies her former best friend was preparing. She texted back, "Of course. Our usual place at 2 p.m.? At the coffee shop." Florence was practically glowing. She ordered a decaf coffee and placed her hand protectively over her stomach in a gesture that made Gladys want to scream. "So what's your exciting news?" Gladys asked, stirring her tea. Florence leaned forward conspirationally. "I'm pregnant." Gladys let her mouth fall open in surprise. "Oh my God, Florence. That's amazing. How far along?" 16 weeks. "I wanted to wait until I was past the risky period before telling anyone." 16 weeks. That was 4 months. Gladys was only 10 weeks along, which meant Florence had gotten pregnant first. While she was going through fertility treatments and crying about not being able to conceive, her best friend was carrying her husband's child. "Who's the father?" Gladys asked innocently. Florence's cheeks turned pink. "It's complicated. He's not available for a relationship right now." But I'm excited to be a single mom. Not available how? He's married, Florence admitted. I know it sounds terrible, but we fell in love. He's going to leave his wife once he gets his financial situation sorted out. Gladys reached across the table and squeezed Florence's hand. I'm sure everything will work out for the best. Actually, Florence said carefully, I was wondering if I could borrow some money? Just temporarily. The father is going to take care of everything soon, but right now I need help with medical expenses. Of course. How much do you need? Maybe 5,000? I hate to ask, but you're my best friend, and I know you understand what it's like to want a baby so badly. Gladys felt bile rise in her throat, but she kept her expression sympathetic. I'll transfer it to your account today. We girls have to stick together, right? After coffee, Gladys sat in her car and called Robert, her private investigator. She just asked me for $5,000 while telling me about her pregnancy with my husband's child, Gladys reported. Jesus. These people have no shame. I want you to follow her after she leaves me. See where she goes, who she talks to. Already on it. I've been tracking both of them all week. They meet every day at lunch to plan their next moves. That evening, Gladys made her own move. She called Hudson at work. Honey, can you come home early? I need to talk to you about something important. Hudson arrived home looking worried. Is everything okay? Is it the baby? The baby is fine. It's about the business expansion. His worry transformed into eager attention. What about it? The bank approved everything. The money will be available for transfer on Friday morning. I wanted you to be the first to know. Hudson tried to contain his excitement, but Gladys could see it in his eyes. Friday was the day they had planned to take everything and run. That's incredible news, he said, pulling her into a hug. I'm so proud of you. Thursday evening, Gladys worked late in her office at home, knowing Hudson was watching her every move. She made a show of reviewing bank documents and investment papers, occasionally sighing with stress. This is so complicated, she said loud enough for him to hear. Moving this much money makes me nervous. Hudson appeared in the doorway. Do you need help with anything? I don't think so. The bank will handle the transfers electronically. I just have to authorize them through the computer system. What time tomorrow? First thing in the morning. 9 a.m. sharp. Hudson nodded and kissed her forehead. You're going to do great. This expansion is exactly what the company needs. That night, Gladys lay awake listening to Hudson make hushed phone calls from the bathroom. She caught fragments, tomorrow morning, be ready, and everything we planned. At 3 a.m. she quietly got up and went to her office. She had one final piece of the trap to set. She created a fake email from the bank confirming that $2 million had been moved to a temporary holding account for the business expansion. The email included account numbers and access codes, all fake, but realistic enough to fool Hudson when he forwarded the information to Florence. Then she created another document showing that an additional $3 million in company reserves would be temporarily accessible for the expansion, bringing the total available funds to $5 million. She left the documents up on her computer screen and went back to bed, knowing Hudson would sneak into the office before morning to photograph them. Sure enough, when her hidden cameras reviewed the footage the next day, Hudson had crept into the office at 5 a.m., taken pictures of her computer screen, and immediately texted them to Florence. By 8 a.m. Friday morning, Hudson was dressed and ready for work, but unusually affectionate. I love you so much, he said, holding her tightly. You know that, right? I love you too, Gladys replied, knowing it might be the last time she would ever say those words to him. At 8:45 a.m., Gladys sat in her office with Agent Rodriguez and two other federal investigators, watching surveillance footage of Hudson and Florence meeting at a downtown internet cafe. They're accessing the fake accounts now, Agent Rodriguez reported through his radio. Attempting to initiate transfers. On the screen, Gladys could see Hudson frantically typing while Florence stood behind him, both of them growing increasingly agitated. The accounts are showing as temporarily locked, another agent reported. They're trying different access codes. Gladys watched her husband and former best friend realize their plan was falling apart. In 10 minutes, federal agents would arrest them both for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted grand theft. Are you ready for this? Agent Rodriguez asked gently. Gladys placed her hand on her stomach, thinking about the future she was protecting for her child. I've been ready since the day I found out what they were planning. At exactly 9 a.m. the trap snapped shut. While federal agents arrested Hudson and Florence downtown, Gladys sat in her office fielding phone calls from reporters who had somehow gotten wind of the story. Local business owner's husband arrested for embezzlement was already trending on local news websites. Her phone buzzed with a call from Janet. They're both in custody, her lawyer reported. Hudson is trying to claim he was investing the money for your benefit. Florence is claiming she didn't know the money was stolen. Both lies, Gladys said calmly. The FBI found evidence of their affair going back 18 months, plus detailed plans to flee the country. They had airline tickets purchased for this weekend. Gladys closed her eyes. While she was going through fertility treatments, crying about not being able to have a baby, her husband was already planning a new family with her best friend. What happens now? They'll be arraigned Monday morning. The federal prosecutor wants to meet with you this afternoon to go over your testimony. After hanging up, Gladys sat quietly in her office, processing the morning's events. She had spent weeks planning this moment, but now that it was here, she felt strangely empty. Her phone rang again. This time it was her mother. Gladys? I just saw the news. Are you all right? I'm fine, Mom. The baby is fine. Baby? Her mother's voice rose in excitement. What baby? Gladys realized she had never told anyone about her pregnancy except Hudson and Florence. She had been so focused on protecting herself from their betrayal that she had forgotten to share her joy with the people who actually cared about her. I'm pregnant, Mom. 12 weeks now. Her mother was quiet for a moment. And Hudson, the father? Yes, but that doesn't change anything. I'm having this baby and I'm going to be a great mother. Of course you are, sweetheart. Do you want me to come over? Actually, yes. I could use the company. That afternoon, Gladys sat with her mother and Janet in the conference room at the prosecutor's office, going through the evidence against Hudson and Florence. The financial crimes are straightforward, Prosecutor Williams explained. They stole over $200,000 and were attempting to steal $5 million more. That's felony grand theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy. How long could they go to prison? Gladys asked. With the evidence we have, Hudson is looking at 15 to 20 years. Florence, as an accessory, might get 10 to 15. Gladys's mother squeezed her hand. I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. I keep thinking about how they planned this while I was struggling to get pregnant, Gladys said. How they sat at my dinner table, ate my food, and plotted to destroy my life. Some people are capable of terrible things when they think they can get away with it, Prosecutor Williams said gently. But you caught them. You protected yourself and your company. That evening, Gladys returned home to the house she had shared with Hudson. Everything looked the same, but it all felt different now. She walked through rooms filled with memories that had turned out to be lies. In their bedroom, she found a suitcase hidden in the back of Hudson's closet, packed with clothes and documents. Inside, she found a fake passport, airplane tickets to Costa Rica dated for the next day, and a folder full of financial documents for accounts she had never seen. At the bottom of the suitcase was a letter addressed to her. Gladys, by the time you read this, Florence and I will be gone. I know this will hurt you, but I never loved you the way I love her. The marriage was a mistake from the beginning. The money I took was payment for the years I wasted pretending to be happy with you. Don't try to find us. Gladys read the letter twice, then tore it into pieces. Even his goodbye was cruel and selfish. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is all your fault. You drove him away with your obsession with having a baby. We would have been happy if you had just let him go. Florence. Even from jail, she was trying to make Gladys feel guilty for their crimes. Gladys blocked the number and called her mother. I want to sell the house, she said. I can't raise my baby in a place filled with lies. Where will you go? I've been thinking about that property Dad left me upstate. The one with the farmhouse. It needs work, but it would be peaceful. That sounds perfect for a fresh start. That night, alone in the house for the first time since discovering the betrayal, Gladys sat in her father's old study and wrote in a journal she had started keeping. My daughter will never wonder if her mother loved her enough to fight for her. She will grow up knowing that when people tried to take what was ours, I fought back and won. She will learn that kindness is not weakness, and that sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who protect you from people who would hurt you. She placed her hand on her growing belly. We're going to be okay, baby girl. Better than okay. We're going to be free. The weekend after the arrests, Gladys's house became a media circus. News vans lined her street, and reporters knocked on her door asking for interviews. She hired a security company to manage the chaos while she packed up the life she was leaving behind. Her mother came to help, along with Patricia from the office and 2 other female employees who had become friends over the past 3 years. I can't believe we worked with him every day and never suspected, Patricia said as they packed boxes in the kitchen. He seemed so devoted to you. That's what made him dangerous, Gladys replied. He was a good liar. As they packed, Gladys found reminders of the deception everywhere. Wedding photos that now looked like lies. Anniversary gifts that had been bought with stolen money. Love letters from Hudson that mentioned their future together, while he was already planning to leave her. What do you want to do with these? Her mother asked, holding up their wedding album. Keep it, Gladys said after a moment. Someday my daughter might want to see it. I'll tell her the truth about what happened, but I won't pretend her father never existed. Monday morning brought the arraignment. Gladys sat in the courtroom watching Hudson and Florence stand before the judge in orange jumpsuits. They both looked tired and defeated, nothing like the confident conspirators she had overheard at the hospital. Hudson's eyes found hers across the courtroom. For a moment she saw something that might have been regret. Then his lawyer whispered something to him and his expression hardened. Both defendants pleaded not guilty, which surprised no one. Their lawyers requested bail, but the prosecutor argued they were flight risks given the plane tickets and fake documents found in Hudson's possession. The defendants were literally hours away from fleeing the country with stolen funds, Prosecutor Williams told the judge. They cannot be trusted to remain in the jurisdiction. Bail was denied. As Gladys left the courthouse, a reporter thrust a microphone in her face. Mrs. Carter, how do you feel seeing your husband in chains? I feel sorry for the man I thought I married, she said calmly. But I have no sympathy for thieves. That afternoon she met with a real estate agent about selling the house. With all the media attention, this might take longer than usual, the agent warned. Some buyers will be put off by the notoriety. That's fine. I'm not in a hurry. What she didn't tell the agent was that she had already found her new home. The farmhouse on her father's old property was perfect for what she needed: privacy, space, and distance from the memories that haunted her current life. Tuesday brought an unexpected visitor. Hudson's mother, Eleanor, showed up at Gladys's office looking haggard and desperate. Please, Eleanor begged. You have to drop the charges against Hudson. He made a mistake, but prison will destroy him. Gladys looked at the woman who had welcomed her into the family 5 years ago. Eleanor had been kind to her, had celebrated their wedding, had cried with her over their fertility struggles. Eleanor, he didn't make a mistake. He spent over a year systematically stealing from me while planning to abandon me and our child. But you're successful, you have money. Can't you forgive him this once? Would you forgive someone who tried to steal your grandson's inheritance? Eleanor's face crumpled. Grandson? I'm having a baby. Your son was planning to disappear and leave his child with nothing. The older woman sat down heavily. I didn't know about the baby. He didn't tell you because he didn't plan to be around to help raise it. Eleanor left without another word, and Gladys never saw her again. Wednesday brought news from Janet that Hudson's lawyers were trying to make a deal. They're offering to plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. What does that mean for the money? Full restitution plus damages. You get back everything they stole plus interest and penalties. And prison time? Maybe 8 to 10 years instead of 20. Gladys considered this. Part of her wanted to see Hudson get the maximum sentence, but another part just wanted it to be over. What do you recommend? Take the deal. You'll get your money back, they'll still go to prison, and you can move on with your life without a lengthy trial. That evening, Gladys sat in her father's study making the final decision. On her desk was an ultrasound photo of her daughter, now 16 weeks along and clearly visible on the screen. She thought about what kind of mother she wanted to be. Did she want to be someone who fought for justice, or someone consumed by revenge? The answer was clear. She wanted justice, but she also wanted peace. She called Janet. Accept the deal, but I have conditions. What conditions? Full financial restitution, plus they both have to serve at least 5 years minimum. No early release for good behavior. And I want restraining orders preventing them from contacting me or my child ever. I think we can make that work. Friday morning the deal was signed. Hudson and Florence would plead guilty and serve 8 years in federal prison. Gladys would recover every stolen dollar plus substantial damages. As she left the courthouse for the final time, Gladys felt lighter than she had in months. It was over. She was free. That weekend she drove upstate to see the farmhouse. It sat on 50 acres of rolling hills, with a view of mountains in the distance. The house needed work, but it had good bones and endless possibilities. Standing on the front porch, looking out over land that had belonged to her family for 3 generations, Gladys felt her daughter kick for the first time. This is where you'll grow up, she whispered, placing both hands on her belly. Safe, loved, and free. 3 months had passed since the plea deal was finalized. Gladys was now 6 months pregnant and had moved into the renovated farmhouse. The media attention had died down, her company was thriving without Hudson's interference, and she had found a peace she hadn't felt in years. But peace was interrupted by an unexpected phone call from Janet. "Hudson is asking to see you," her lawyer said. "He says he has something important to tell you about the baby." Gladys felt her blood run cold. What could he possibly have to say? "I don't know, but his lawyer says it's urgent. They're requesting a supervised meeting at the prison." "Absolutely not. I have a restraining order." The restraining order allows for supervised contact in legal matters. His lawyer is claiming this relates to paternal rights. Gladys sat down heavily. She had hoped to never see Hudson again, but if he was going to cause problems about the baby, she needed to know what she was dealing with. "Fine. But I want you there and I want everything recorded." The next week, Gladys found herself in the visiting room at the Federal Correctional Facility, her pregnant belly making it difficult to fit comfortably in the plastic chair. Hudson looked thinner than she remembered and older. Prison had aged him. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "Janet said you had something important to tell me about the baby." Hudson looked down at his hands. "I know you probably hate me." "I don't hate you, Hudson. I don't feel anything for you at all." He flinched at that. "I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that. What did you want to tell me?" "I wanted to sign away my parental rights. Completely. I don't want any claim to the baby." Gladys had not expected this. "Why?" "Because she deserves better than having a convicted felon for a father. And because..." He paused, struggling with the words. "Because I know what I did was unforgivable. I don't deserve to be part of her life." "What about Florence? Is she giving up her rights to her baby too?" Hudson's face darkened. "Florence lost the baby 2 months ago. The stress of prison, the legal proceedings, she miscarried." Despite everything, Gladys felt a flash of sympathy. Losing a pregnancy was devastating even under these circumstances. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" Hudson asked bitterly. "I thought you'd be happy." "I'm not happy that a baby died, Hudson. No matter what the circumstances were." He stared at her for a long moment. "You really are a good person, aren't you? Even after everything I did to you. I'm a person who chooses not to let your actions change who I am." "I used to love that about you," he said quietly. "Your goodness. Your strength. I think that's why I had to destroy it. I couldn't stand being married to someone so much better than me." "You didn't destroy anything," Gladys said firmly. "You revealed who you really were and I dealt with it accordingly." Hudson reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. "These are the papers terminating my parental rights. I've already signed them." Gladys took the papers and handed them to Janet, who reviewed them quickly. "They look legitimate," Janet said. "This would give you sole custody with no interference from him." "Why are you doing this?" Gladys asked Hudson. "Because I want to do one decent thing before I spend the next 8 years thinking about what I did to the best person I ever knew." Gladys stood up, ready to leave. "Hudson, I hope you use these 8 years to become someone better. Not for me but for yourself." As she walked away, Hudson called out, "Gladys?" She turned back. "What are you going to name her?" "Grace," Gladys said without hesitation. "Her name is Grace." The drive home gave Gladys time to process the meeting. She had expected anger, manipulation, or attempts at reconciliation. Instead, she had found a broken man who finally understood the magnitude of what he had lost. It didn't change what he had done, but it gave her closure in a way she hadn't expected. That evening, she called her mother to share the news about the parental rights. "How do you feel about it?" her mother asked. "Relieved. Grace will never have to deal with custody battles or visits to see her father in prison. She can grow up knowing she's wanted and loved by the people who choose to be in her life." "And what will you tell her about Hudson when she's older?" "The truth. That her father made terrible choices that hurt people, including her. That she doesn't have to carry his mistakes, but she can learn from them." A week later, the parental rights termination was finalized. Gladys was now legally the sole parent of her unborn daughter, with no interference from Hudson or his family. She celebrated by painting the nursery a soft yellow color and hanging the ultrasound pictures on the wall. Grace would grow up knowing she was wanted from the very beginning, planned for and protected even before she was born. As Gladys worked on the nursery, she thought about the future. She would raise Grace to be strong, independent, and capable of protecting herself. She would teach her about trust and betrayal, about justice and forgiveness, about the difference between kindness and weakness. Most importantly, she would raise Grace to know her own worth, so that she would never accept treatment from anyone that diminished her value. The confrontation with Hudson had been the final chapter of that part of her life. Now she could focus entirely on building something new and better for herself and her daughter. 2 weeks before Grace's due date, Gladys received a call that she had been expecting but dreading. Florence had been found dead in her prison cell, an apparent suicide. "I'm sorry to have to tell you this," Prosecutor Williams said over the phone. "I know this complicates things emotionally." Gladys sat in the nursery, surrounded by tiny clothes and baby furniture, processing the news. "Was there a note?" "Yes. She blamed you for destroying her life. Said she couldn't live with the guilt and shame." "The guilt and shame of being caught," Gladys corrected. "Her family is trying to claim she was mentally unstable due to the pregnancy loss and legal stress. They're suggesting you pushed her to this. Are you telling me I'm going to be blamed for the consequences of her own choices? I'm telling you that some people might try to paint you as vindictive. I wanted you to be prepared." After hanging up, Gladys went for a walk around her property. The autumn air was crisp and the trees were changing colors. In 2 weeks, she would be holding her daughter in this peaceful place, far from the chaos that Florence and Hudson had created. She felt sad about Florence's death but not guilty. Florence had made her choices, just as Gladys had made hers. The difference was that Gladys had chosen to fight for justice and build a better future, while Florence had chosen to give up. The next morning brought a more welcome phone call. Janet had news about the financial restitution. "All the stolen money has been recovered, plus damages and legal fees. The total amount being transferred to your accounts is $347,000. That's more than they stole. The court added penalties and interest. Plus, Hudson's assets were liquidated to pay additional damages. His car, his watch collection, his investment portfolio, everything." Gladys thought about Hudson sitting in a prison cell with nothing left of his old life. She didn't feel satisfaction at his losses, just a quiet sense that justice had been served. What about Florence's estate? Her family is trying to claim she was coerced into the crimes, but the evidence is overwhelming. Her share of the restitution will come from her assets as well. That afternoon, Gladys drove into town for a prenatal appointment. Dr. Martinez confirmed that Grace was healthy and positioned perfectly for delivery. "Any day now," the doctor said with a smile. "Are you ready?" "I think so. The nursery is finished, the hospital bag is packed, and I have help lined up for the first few weeks." "What about emotional support?" "Having a baby is overwhelming even under the best circumstances." Gladys thought about the question. "I have my mother, my friends from work, and honestly I think I'm stronger now than I was 9 months ago." "How so?" "I learned that I can handle anything life throws at me. I can protect what matters and fight for what's right. That's a pretty good foundation for motherhood." Driving home, Gladys stopped at the cemetery to visit her father's grave. She did this monthly now, updating him on her progress and asking for guidance. "I wish you could meet your granddaughter," she said, placing flowers on the headstone. "But I think you'd be proud of how I handled everything. I protected the business, protected myself, and protected Grace. I did what you taught me. I was strong when I needed to be." The wind rustled the trees and Gladys chose to interpret it as approval. That evening she worked late in her home office, reviewing the quarterly reports for Carter Logistics. The company had grown significantly over the past year, despite or perhaps because of the chaos in her personal life. Her employees had rallied around her, working harder than ever to prove their loyalty. She had also hired 3 new female managers, including a brilliant young woman named Rachel who reminded Gladys of herself at that age, ambitious, smart, and determined to prove herself in a male-dominated industry. "The future of this company is female," Gladys had told Rachel during her interview. "I want Grace to grow up seeing women in leadership positions, making decisions and building something lasting." As she finished reviewing the reports, Gladys felt a sharp pain in her lower back. She had been having these pains for days, but this one was stronger. Then she felt warm liquid running down her legs. Her water had broken. Grace was coming. Gladys grabbed her hospital bag and called her mother, her hands shaking with excitement rather than fear. "It's time, Mom. I'm going to the hospital. I'll meet you there, sweetheart. Drive carefully." As Gladys drove through the night toward the hospital where this whole journey had begun, she thought about the circle her life had traveled. She had walked into that building 9 months ago as a woman desperate for a baby, married to a man she trusted completely. She was returning as a woman who had fought for justice, rebuilt her life, and was about to become a mother on her own terms. Grace Carter was about to enter a world where she was wanted, planned for, and already deeply loved by a mother who would fight anyone who tried to hurt her. The revenge was complete, but more importantly, the new beginning was about to start. Grace Elizabeth Carter was born at 6:47 a.m. on a crisp October morning, weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces. She had her mother's dark eyes and her grandfather's determined chin, and she came into the world with a strong cry that announced her arrival to everyone within hearing distance. Gladys held her daughter for the first time and felt a love so fierce it took her breath away. All the pain of the past year, all the betrayal and legal battles and sleepless nights planning her revenge, none of it mattered anymore. This tiny, perfect human being was worth every moment of struggle. "Hello, baby girl," she whispered. "I'm your mama, and I've been waiting so long to meet you." Her mother stood beside the hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. "She's perfect, Gladys. Absolutely perfect. Look at those eyes," the nurse said with a smile. "She's alert already. Smart baby. She's going to need to be," Gladys said, kissing Grace's forehead. "The world can be a complicated place." The first week at home was a blur of feeding schedules, diaper changes, and the overwhelming responsibility of caring for another human being. Gladys had hired a night nurse for the first month, but during the day she was determined to care for Grace herself. On Grace's 1-week birthday, Patricia came to visit, bringing flowers and a beautiful baby blanket that the entire office had chipped in to buy. "She's gorgeous," Patricia said, holding Grace expertly. "She has your determination already. Look at how she's staring at me like she's figuring me out." "That's the Carter family trait," Gladys said. "We assess first, trust later. How are you feeling?" "Really?" Gladys considered the question. "Happy. Tired but happy. For the first time in over a year, I feel like my life is exactly where it's supposed to be." A month later, Janet called with the final update on the legal proceedings. Hudson has been transferred to a minimum security facility upstate. Model prisoner, apparently. Working in the prison library and taking college courses. Good for him. I hope he uses the time wisely. His mother tried to contact the court about visitation rights with Grace. Gladys felt her protective instincts flare. And? The judge denied the request. Hudson signed away all parental rights, which includes extended family rights. Eleanor has no legal standing. Good. Grace doesn't need that complication in her life. Janet paused. There's something else. The FBI investigation uncovered more victims. Apparently, Hudson and Florence had done this before, targeting wealthy women. You weren't their first mark. Gladys felt sick. How many others? At least 3 other women over the past 5 years. Smaller amounts of money but the same pattern: romance, marriage or close friendship, gradual financial theft, then disappearance. Are they pressing charges? 2 of them are. Hudson's prison sentence just got extended to 15 years. After hanging up, Gladys looked down at Grace, who was sleeping peacefully in her arms. Her daughter would grow up never knowing the man who had tried to steal her future before she was even born. Spring arrived with a burst of new life on the farm. Gladys hired contractors to build a playground and a small garden where she could teach Grace about growing things. The house was filled with laughter and the sounds of a baby discovering the world. Rachel stopped by one afternoon to update Gladys on the business. Carter Logistics had just landed its biggest contract ever, a partnership with a major shipping company that would double their revenue within 2 years. "I never thought I'd say this," Rachel admitted, "but the scandal actually helped our reputation. People see you as someone who fights for what's right, who doesn't let people take advantage of her. Clients trust that." "My father always said that character is built in crisis moments," Gladys replied, bouncing Grace on her lap. "I guess mine was built last year." That evening, Gladys sat on her front porch watching the sunset while Grace napped in her carrier. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, desperate for a baby, trusting her husband completely, believing that good people always got good results. She was wiser now, stronger, more careful about who she trusted. But she wasn't bitter or cynical. She had learned to distinguish between caution and fear, between protecting herself and closing herself off from love. Grace stirred in her carrier, making the soft sounds that meant she was about to wake up. Gladys picked her up and settled her against her shoulder. "Mama's got you," she whispered. "Always." As if she understood, Grace made a contented sound and relaxed against her mother's chest. 6 months later, Gladys received an unexpected letter. It was from Hudson, forwarded through Janet's office. "Gladys," it began, "I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know that I've been thinking about you and Grace every day. Not because I want anything from you. I know I gave up that right when I signed the papers. I just wanted to tell you that I'm proud of how you handled everything. You showed more strength and grace than I ever had. I hope Grace grows up to be like you, not like me. I'm working on becoming someone better, but I know it's too late for us. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I hope you're happy." Gladys read the letter twice, then filed it away in a folder marked Grace's History. Someday when Grace was old enough to understand, she might want to read it. Until then it would wait. The letter didn't change anything, but it confirmed what Gladys had hoped, that Hudson was using his time in prison to become someone better. Not for her, but for himself. On Grace's first birthday, Gladys threw a party in the backyard of the farmhouse. Her mother was there, along with Patricia and the other women from the office, Rachel and her family, Dr. Martinez, and even Janet and her husband. As Grace sat in her high chair, laughing at the colorful balloons and trying to grab handfuls of birthday cake, Gladys looked around at the people who had supported her through the darkest time of her life. These were the people who mattered. These were the ones who had proven their love through actions, not words. "Make a wish," her mother said, holding Grace's tiny hand near the birthday candle. Gladys looked at her daughter, healthy and happy and surrounded by love. "I don't need to wish for anything," she said. "I already have everything I ever wanted." That night, after the guest had gone home and Grace was asleep in her crib, Gladys sat in the nursery and wrote in the journal she had been keeping for her daughter. "Today you turn 1 year old, and I realized that the best revenge I ever got wasn't seeing your father go to prison or getting the money back. The best revenge was building this life without him. You are my victory, Grace. You are proof that good people can win, that love is stronger than betrayal, and that the future is always brighter than the past. I fought for you before you were born, and I'll keep fighting for you every day of your life. Not with anger or hatred, but with love and determination and the absolute certainty that you deserve the best this world has to offer. Your father thought he could steal our future. Instead, he gave us the chance to build something better than anything he could have imagined. We are stronger because we survived his betrayal. We are happier because we learned to trust the right people. We are free because we refused to let his choices define our lives. This is your story, Grace. It started with someone trying to hurt us, but it ends with us winning everything that matters: love, family, security, and the knowledge that we are capable of protecting what's ours. Sleep well, my darling girl. Tomorrow is going to be beautiful." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees her father had planted decades ago. Gladys chose to interpret it as his approval, his blessing on the life she had built for his granddaughter. Justice had been served. Love had triumphed. The future belonged to Grace. And that was the best revenge of all.